13. I'm Jessica Johnson.
I'm Chloe Adcock.
And I'm Miranda Coley.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and start with our prompt, the first prompt that we had, and it was, how did the teacher leaders use of data align with the best practices?
Well, I'll just go ahead and say when I was there in the actual I sat in a sit meeting, which was very interesting because it was like data galore that I surely didn't have a clue about until taking this course and doing what we're doing now. But it was just it was data driven. I think the new principal, because we have a new principal, she's pretty much trying to make sure the school is has a data driven culture. So the data was based on pretty much coming from teacher observations. It was behavior assessments, just, and as well is, what, it was just a lot of data. But it was post test. It was, in addition to that, it was the data from just last year. Like last year, they was trying to combine stuff from last year and this year, and what they thought where we would be by the time we took the benchmark, because we had not taken the benchmark, but were we in the area to where we would get good benchmark results. It's kind of like where we were. And so everything that we discussed or they were discussing, it was data driven. It was, hey, do you think we need to reteach the standards? Why do we need to reteach the standards? Why did so and so in sixth grade, for instance, why are their pre-test scores this, but then their post-test scores are looking like this? There's not a, they're shooting for double-digit gains. So what do you think? Why did, and it was down to, well, what questions do you think that the concepts, what standards were they not getting? So that was one of the things that I really noticed. And it went as far as to, they were saying some data, it's like with the reteaching, do you think we need to reteach? And they did an observation on that with the teachers and said, okay, that's going to be our next PL. We're going to teach the teachers how to reteach when the data doesn't, you need to improve the data on that concept because they didn't master it. If that's making sense to, okay. But
from my experience, I actually chose to venture into a whole new world because I am very used to, as a content teacher in English, we have been very data driven for the last few years that I've been in my current school system. So we have to have weekly data meetings where we look at formative assessments and we make decisions based on those assessment results. So I felt familiar with that, and a lot of the friends I eat lunch with are in math, and I have friends in science. So I'm used to collaborating and hearing how other groups are doing with their data meetings. So I wanted to try to go into something that I'm less familiar with. So I met with our CTAE director, who also serves as an assistant principal, and I had no idea that she still has to use so much data for her own um, job. She was the first thing she brought up to me was that she had to look at assessment results that I didn't realize that they have kind of like a pre-post test that I didn't know existed. And so she first talked to me about results from that. But what she was currently doing when I observed her was looking at, after the first 9 weeks, she was evaluating what students had no chance in passing, looking at the CTA classes and looking at pulling grades and trying to assess like which kids did she need to look at to put in the cyber lab to give them an opportunity to still pass that class. And she was telling me that she starts with seniors because that's going to be the ones that we obviously needed to look at first because of graduation. And then she would go down to the juniors because there's only so many seats open in Cyber Lab. I mean, Cyber Lab is also used for our students in content, classes, but that day that I observed her, that's what she was looking over. She does look at attendance, because if they have missed too many days, they actually don't qualify to use CyberLab. They do end up having to retake the entire class. So that wouldn't be an option for them, but she was trying to evaluate what students, and she did first, she talked about she's had a list of students that would be kind of considered at risk since the mid quarter, like since 4.5 weeks in. And she said she looks at things like, we talked about one of the teachers that's brand new, and she had actually sent them to a classroom management professional development, because the teacher had not ever had, she did not go to school to teach. And she said, I'm trying to really help her, because you're trying to figure out, is this an issue of, we looked at behavior, she looks at behavior, she looks at all of it, because it's like, where she's like, I've been looking along this line of the at-risk students to figure out what is the issue. Is it a child that's unmotivated? Is it a kid that's not coming to school? Is this child truly struggling with the content? Is it because, and I'm not trying to step on toes, but it's like, or is this that the teacher just is not delivering it in a way that students are understanding? So for me, I realized that in CTAE, they do a lot of the same things that we have to do on our end with the academic world. So I thought it was interesting to see her and what she was doing, evaluating, going through. I guess I have something else to get to, but I think it's going to be at a later question. Okay. So if you want to go ahead, Jessica, and we'll chime in.
So I am CTAE, and that's interesting to hear that side of what Chloe went to. I taught primary school for the longest, and then I moved to the high school. So whenever I moved to the high school, I'm by myself. I'm my own person. So I really don't have anybody to do data with but me. It's just me, myself, and I, or go sit with my CTA director, because nobody else does what I do. But I went with my instructional coach to our science department, and they're pretty much rocking and rolling. They're doing great gains. They do a really good job. They all mesh well together. But the best practices that, like I saw with her, was that they had the data before. It was this huge packet of data with all of this stuff from Renaissance, and it had it broken down even by question. So those teachers were given that like the day after. They just have to contact their instructional coach, and she gets the information or the data up for them. They don't do that. They don't have access to that, she said. And then they start looking at their weaknesses and their strengths, and they all discuss. They were discussing biology whenever I came in the first time. That's what they were discussing. And then they meet regularly. They had that agenda going on. And then they actually had the agenda put up on the ClearTouch board. And one of the teachers, the head teacher, she was typing in the information as they went through, so everybody could see where they were and they stayed on track. So it was just really, she was just there to facilitate, and they were there moving and grooving through the meeting. They were in charge of the meeting themselves. And then our AP was there as well, and she just offered insight a little bit at a time. But our instructional coach, she used to teach science, so it was really good, and it was fun to watch her give them little feedbacks as well as to things that she used to do when she taught those subjects that they were talking about as well. So that was pretty much how that went, best practices, having that data before and then letting them do that. And they had clear objectives set to talk about it as well.
Okay. And I guess I want to add, because I didn't say, I did go with my instructional coach, math and science instructional coach. And she, the SIT meeting consisted of both instructional coaches, math, science, and language arts, social studies. The administrators, all the administrators were there, as well as it was 2 people from the state that were there. So it's just like they're there because, we're trying to get off of the list, and they were there asking questions. So that was the reasoning for that. But yeah, she pretty much, when I said pre-post test, she presented the pre and post test data for math and science. And then, everybody had their data they had to present. And it just made the connection for me is that the pre, the post, when we do the CFAs and things like that, all of that comes together. And why? Because usually when we're in the PL, our professional learning, she's like, well, what about the data? What about the data? So it made the connection that she needs the data so she can actually put it so that they could actually analyze the data and see where we are. But
Okay.
That's something we've been told directly this year, is that we can't just go on a hunch. They were like, it doesn't need to be, well, I just think that I'm going to use just a generic name. I just think that Timmy is lazy and does not care. They were like, okay, well, I need you to be able to show evidence of that, which is where, best practice is to look at the whole picture. And I think not just looking at one specific semester, it is looking back over, is this a pattern? Whether it is behavior or attendance or something else going on. It's not just, well, you just think that are you, I hate to say, it's like, is the kid just not like your class? Is it a personality conflict? Are they not sleeping? There is other things that we have to look at, and not just that, well, that's your opinion, but can you back it up?
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Jessica. I don't know if you can answer this because you said you are CTAE. So working with our CTAE director that day and really watching what she was doing and observing her, and I did ask her some questions, but now I'm wishing I had asked this specific question that I wrote down later. So I don't know if you can answer it. If not, I can go back and ask her. Does the CTAE director, do they not ever work with like an instructional coach?
Our director as a whole. Now at our school, ours does, but really like CTA is like its own little
thing. That's what I'm trying to say.
It really is. It's like its own thing, and it's like nobody knows. Like
I feel like when I was working with her, like when you talk about when we have PLs and we work together and we have teacher input and we have our instructional coach, she was doing all of this by herself.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So
that's my concern, is like, I'm not saying she doesn't do a fabulous job, but I guess that's normal, common. I don't know.
Now we all of us, we don't have common planning. We don't all get to meet together because we're the CTA
I'm sorry
department.
for that. It's like there's fire trucks going by. I'm sorry. I'm out of town. I'm at a hotel staying up here for a family thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, if y'all hear that, sorry.
It's fun. But no, it's like CTA is its own little thing. So we, at my school, we're not able to have common planning even with our other CTAE people, which I'm the only one that teaches facts. But even our ag department, they don't even get to have their planning together. So our use of our instructional coach is more or less when we call her and say, hey, can you come to my planning time and let's sit down and let's talk about something, or whenever she does her observations, because she does come in our classrooms, but so does our CTA director. She lives in our classroom. She's always in and out of our classrooms, and
that's something that I really did like too, is she was giving me a lot of different feedback professionally. I mean, she wasn't trying to talk anybody. She never really gave names on people or anything like that, but she was telling me that she does go in a lot of classrooms to do observations, because I was asking her about the whole thing about, well, how does this lead to professional developments or like decisions that you make?
And then even like at our little PLs that we have within our department, if she sees something that one of us did really well this past week, we had one of our ag guys, I hate to call them ag guys, but one of our ag teachers, he gave how he did a project with the students and how he used a rubric and some different little things just to give an idea. So if she sees any of us doing something well, she will get us to present that to the rest of the group of our CTA people. So that's kind of like we have our own little PLs within our little group. So
I hear y'all saying CTA, but can y'all explain to me what that is? Because I don't know.
So that's
because you're middle school, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Which they do have CTA at the middle school. So
we do at our middle school.
Your CTA would be at your middle school would be your ag department, or maybe you have a facts class, your connection classes maybe. So like at our school, CTA is career, technical, education, and agriculture education.
Okay.
So like I have facts, I'm early childhood, and then they'll have the like business. My husband does engineering. You'll have your ag, marketing, those types of things.
Okay.
So you can kind of say like your connections, your extracurriculars.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Okay.
All right.
We
Question
do have
number 2. It says, what surprised you about the decision-making process? So I guess whenever they were talking about the data, then what surprised you about that?
I feel like I kind of just answered that for me, that I was just shocked that she has to really work on her own through a lot of that for the data. Like she was in her office working through it the day. When I asked her if there was a day I could observe, and she was like, hey, I'm going to run down some of what I looked at for the first 9 weeks and make a decision on which kids are headed to Cyber Lab or qualify. If you want to come and watch me walk, she taught me through what she was doing. But I think that was, to me, what I guess was surprising to me is I was like, she has to do this by herself.
Sometimes I do. Yeah. What about you, Miranda?
What was surprising to me is that, she, the instructional coach, she has like 3 different grade levels. So from those 3 different grade levels, she has to pull the data and work with everyone and try to make sense of the data that she retrieves from them. And she has to get up in front of everybody and present and try to. Sometimes I saw that she was trying to advocate for certain teachers, but in that, I guess since it's the SIT meeting, they really were not really listening to that. It's more or less like, well, what does the data say? And based on the data, where are we going from that? And that's just was like, if it's not, I just realized it. They're not pulling things out of a hat. It's really seriously, okay, this is what you got. This is what you gave me. This is the data. And this is what we're using, and how are we going to improve from where are we going to go from this, and how we're going to get there. That's pretty much, that was what was so surprising, that the data is very important and vital to the course of where, the progress of the students, and it's just as effective for the teachers as well. So that was
probably something that was really surprising to me, and I guess it's probably from the point of I'm a big relationship person. I'm always in the kids, I don't want to say in their business, but I'm always wanting to know, like, where were you at yesterday? And that was something that was very surprising to me as they were looking at that data. They only had that, like I showed you this packet of stuff, but they never looked at the attendance of those students that didn't meet what they were trying to meet on that test. They never pulled that data. I've asked afterwards, after the meeting, because that all those the articles that we read talked about that was one of the things that they talked about, was that student data was their attendance. And the instructional coach, she just said, well, the teachers know when they've missed. I'm like, but okay, that's fine. But I mean, we can say we know when they've missed, but to me, I need it on paper. So that was just kind of surprising to me that they really didn't have the attendance of the students on paper. And did that affect, their learning? Were they not there that day when they covered about mitosis or all the other words?
I think that's actually a really good point, though. And I'm thinking, I'm speaking from personal, that's not something that we usually discuss in our PL. Like when we have our data meetings, we don't really discuss that. It like what I've started doing is I have my lesson plan, my weekly plan, and I actually post it behind my desk on like this board. And I've started going, because this year, as a state, we're being very strict on 3 days or we don't take notes. I'm sure that's across the board, right?
Yeah.
Like, well, there being like 3 days to get your excuses in. So yes. I started writing down on that, just like if I have a desktop calendar or something, but behind me now I do it. And I write down after I take attendance, if a kid's out, I turn around and I put it on there. So when they come in the next day, I try to remind them, hey, don't forget, you need to get a parent note in, or you need to get your doctor's note in, or whatever. And I did it for that purpose. But you've now kind of flipped an idea that I'm like, I also could be adding this to looking at, okay, we went over, that was the day I really gave direct instruction over X, Y, whatever it was. And it's like, that could be a reason why
they didn't get it.
They did not perform well.
Yeah.
It's funny that y'all saying that. Now it's like dawning on me, to where usually when they're not there, it's just like what you said, I'm going to a new standard. And it's just like, dang, so-and-so's not here. Do I really want to teach it, or do I just want to kind of focus on this? I was like, because being that I'm in, the resource classroom, it's just like, once I move on, it's like, are they going to catch it? It's very hard to
especially when it's something that they don't have a lot to pull from. Like it is new concept.
New stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's just like, what are we on right now? We're on expressions and expressions, finding expressions, the area of a rectangle. And the rectangle is like cut into two parts, and then they have the variable and everything. And the student, he wasn't there. I know he wasn't there. So it's just like today he came in, and it's just like I'm just giving him that ILP, and I was like, okay, you're gonna pick up here. But I did go back, and it's just like you missed the whole day, that class of instruction, and and even when sometimes I give the pre and post test, it's just, or the post test primarily, and they're not there, and it's like, okay,
because I don't know if I'm sure you do. It's kind of a universal thing when kids come back after being out and they're like, "What'd y'all do yesterday?" And I mean, I always update my agenda every day of what we're doing as a running list in Google Classroom, so they can look at that. And of course, I'll go. I have an area where it's like if you were out, go get your papers from where you were out. Mm-hmm. But I'll be honest, for the most part, I mean, I'm not the best about going back over there. I'm not going to go over there and start teaching you about it.
No.
You know what I mean? I'm like, here's what you missed. And I mean, and I'm honest about this. What do you think most of them are going to do? Who already did the paper? And they're going to try to get it from somebody or whatever. But I'm like, there's no way they actually grasped it because they missed all of that during instruction. So that's just kind of got my brain running. Like, do you guys have like an ELT time, extended learning time?
We have
asked for one.
We do. We do. We have.
Now I'm sitting here thinking about, like, there's times that as teachers, unless you're very intentional, we do sometimes feel like it ends up being we're not utilizing it the best. It is. Yeah. I mean, it's just like, it ends up certain kids have to be pulled for, remediation or other things. But I'm also thinking we could use that time to go back over skills practice. And even if you were there that day, I'm like, it don't hurt you to hear it again.
Mm-hmm. I know we do have that enrichment block, and what the difference is that the special ed teachers are to go over skills-based things. We're pulling from iReady, math and reading, and the general ed are just pulling standards-based stuff. So, yeah.
Okay.
Our next question.
Number 3, how would you approach a similar situation as a future leader? I guess from what you saw and the decision-making process, what would you do?
I don't mind going first. I actually feel like my CTA director or / assistant principal, I feel like she does a fabulous job based on our conversation. I do think she's using best practices when she was looking at multiple pieces, not just one. And she's able to show that she's had this running list of at-risk kids since the mid-quarter. I mean, I thought she was doing a lot of great things. She did express this, so I can't say she does not do it, but in what I observed only, if this was me. I think I would also look more closely, not just at the juniors and seniors who are closer to graduation and wanting to be sure that we give them opportunities to graduate on time. I think I would want to go look at the 9th and 10th graders that are still at risk and try to determine, you could tell me you have more input as CTAE. They may just not be in a pathway that they're that interested in.
Well, that is a big thing, is them not being placed. Sometimes we get students, because mine is early childhood education, and not all of them want to be teachers or work with kids, but sometimes they're placed that because their academic schedule has to be that way for them to get the classes that they need. So sometimes
I know it's like, at this point, you kind of have to hope they can. I mean, maybe there is something they can do, whether it's some type of I don't know. We used to use this, like, not discipline, academic contracts, where we would give it, like, if you finish this module or whatever, we'll give you points back for the first 9 weeks, because we still do running grades. So I feel like if there was an opportunity to, if you pulled him in and had that conversation with some of those kids who are failing at that point, give them some type of opportunity because they don't qualify to go over to the cyber lab, but then just say, look, if this is not something you are interested in, we are going to try to get you next semester or next year into something that you are interested in, but you got to work with us right now and get this credit.
Yeah.
That's true. I mean, I hear what y'all are talking about, because, I mean, even though I'm at the middle school level, I wish we had something similar. And the reason I'm saying that is because one of the things that I notice is that the question from the SIT, one of the SIT meeting, during the meeting, it's more or less like, well, what are the grades? What are the students' grades? The grades aren't reflecting what they're actually what their test scores are showing. So if they had a valid place to go to actually try to gain and pass, and it's bona fide, and there is actually data to go with it compared to what they're doing, instead of, hey, we're giving opportunities for them. And when you start giving opportunities, the opportunities are just what they are, opportunities, I guess, to try to get them to pass the class. But that doesn't measure actually, do they know the content? Yes, did they learn it? So that is not, yeah. So what y'all are saying?
Probably with me, I really like the facilitator approach, where our instructional coach was just there and they had their agenda. I really, I like that way that they did that. That way those teachers still felt in control, and it was just a conversation, just kind of like what we're having now. Everybody was just talking when they felt led to talk. But there were times where she would speak up and say, okay, Mr. Bob, what do you think about this? Those kind of things, and just allow those teachers. I would have recapped the agenda one more time at the end that they had thrown up on the clear touch board. It was like, as soon as they finished it, one of the teachers just got up and walked out, and I was like, what's going on, kind of thing. And they're like, he always does that. And I was like, oh, okay. So this is the meeting over? So I just think I would have probably just recapped one more time and said, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is where we're going with this. And that kind of stuff. That probably would have been one of the things that I probably would have just done a little bit different, a different approach on that little part of it, and probably done the part about looking at the attendance. And even, I know one of the things in our, those articles was talking about data literacy and knowing that and how to read. And, I sat back and I thought about that after I read all that stuff. I was like, in my earlier years of teaching, I don't ever remember being sat down and taught how to read data.
Nope.
And even at the high school, I went in and I asked the instructional coach this morning one more time. I was like, okay, so let's just recap this one more time. I said, do you teach them? And she was like, well, no, not really. We never really have had like a PL on that. And I was like, that's something that we probably all would benefit from, just even from whenever we're doing our Elliott observations that we've been having to do lately to prepare for our 5-year
to do the same
we're getting
thing.
ready for. It's just kind of like all the components are there. Then it's like we're missing those. And she's like, well, who trains people? And I said, I don't know. But in all the articles that we just got finished reading, it talked about that. That was one of the big things that it talked about, but it never really said, okay, sign up here to get some training.
And I feel like we weren't, and that's something you mentioned. I feel like you mentioned to me, is that there needs to be some type of professional development over that. And I 100% agree, because I can honestly say I have learned a lot through going through college classes, through just, I think we've become more intentional about data. But one of my biggest kind of disgruntles or whatever complaints was like last year when we were not doing a great job with data. I don't feel like last year, because we were only putting in summatives. And I used to work in a different school system where that was like, no. Like summative have a purpose, but we need to be looking at all the way along, the formative data too. But I mean, teachers would just put it in. We would go to a meeting and you sit there and everyone's like, okay, well, I might need to reteach this, or it just, we would look at it, but you could tell that nobody was comfortable yet with what they're supposed to be doing with this. Yeah. And I 100% will admit, when I don't see the value in it, it got put on the back burner. And now, I do 100. Like this year, it's going so much further. But I have a veteran teacher working with me this year who is rocking it out. But I feel like she is very well versed in it. Where we actually we backwards plan. So we look at our skills. We make a one skill. We make a one pager. And then we actually, every time that we do like a quick check or we do something over like formative assessment quiz or whatever, we sit and actually look at the most missed questions. Why do we think we did this? Is this a bad worded question or a poorly worded question? Is this something that, we really didn't do a great job teaching this? Or maybe it's like, you did a great job teaching this. I need help. What did you do? We're having those conversations that before we really didn't. We would have our meetings, but it was just kind of like, okay, that's what it's looking like. But and nobody really knew what they were supposed to be doing with this. I think it would be a wonderful professional professional.
And I saw
learning
the
for
science
teachers.
teachers, they talked about and did a lot like what you were talking about. And then they would also look at, okay, did the kids have enough prerequisite information to answer that question the way that it was worded? So they did break down some questions, and then they talked about they're getting some new questions and how they just got finished doing ELA standards all over again. So the AP, she was like, probably science is coming next. They're going to change all of your standards. But it wasn't to the point of
We're
don't
going through
keep
that with
doing-
the LA new standards.
Yeah.
But even it's like if
Right.
you get, we do have turnover sometimes. So it's like imagine like that would be such a great thing early on
Yes.
for your instructional coach to like hit on at the beginning, especially when you have new people. It's like, okay, this is what we do. This is the purpose of why we do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she said they taught Mr. Bob. He's the new teacher, but he'd been out of the classroom for many years. He went and was preaching for a while, and then now he's come back home and he's still doing some preaching, but he's also doing the teaching side of things again. And I'm like, so much has changed since he was there the last time, I'm sure. So did y'all have she's like, we haven't really, we just showed him. And I was like, but I need some training myself on some data analysis and
But see,
some
that's
literacy.
right. Some of I have a couple in mind. Some of our like more veteran teachers are the ones I actually hear complain more about it.
Yep.
And it makes me wonder, is it a case of, people look at it as it's more work.
Yeah.
But I feel like the payoff when you're actually is like, it's so much better. I feel like 10 times a better teacher right now because we are being intentional with it. It's just the kids understand what we're supposed to be getting. We're all on the same path. It's just working out. But I feel like it's really not that much more work. It saves you a lot of work, honestly.
Yeah.
What y'all talk about, if we actually went to my assistant principal and mentioned this to her about the data literacy, I told her, I was like, just me being in classes now and understand. I said, I know we've somewhat hit it. And then she was like, well, don't you remember? I said, I don't consider that learning the data. If you tell me to come in and just start writing down what my students' scores were on this, that, and other, I was like, I need to know more than that. I said, but just from what I'm learning, I said, we need, or the whole school and the teachers need to be on one page, understanding the importance of the data, why it's important, and where it comes from. How do we analyze it? How are we intentional about pushing our kids to the next level and just breaking it down? And she was like, well, she was like, well, I'm glad you're so happy about the data. I said, well, it seems like, I said, I just feel like I'm not being effective knowing what I know now. It's like, was I really even effective before? And she said, well, just think about it like this. When you're data driven and you understand and can analyze that data, she said, just imagine how much more effective you would be. She said, it's not that you're not effective. And, she went on to say, she said, but, even with what you do, your numbers are never bad. But just imagine now, if you're grasping, I said, but then I think about, I've been teaching for 13 years and nobody's literally sat down and said, hey, let's do this. Yeah, let's do it.
I feel like the kids like it. We used to give those, just say benchmarks. And I had a principal like about 5 years ago that would make us hold data chats with our students. So when we got these, it was the beacon. And when we got those score reports back, he would tell us you needed to sit 2 or 3 minutes and go over the results with the kids. And so we would have to like kind of rotate and have the other kids doing something while we were meeting with those. And sometimes it might be I only meet with 5 a day, during this time period. But it definitely shows the students that what we're doing matters. It doesn't matter. We are looking at it. We're using it for a purpose. And I think that also helps too, is like it helps them to set their own goals.
Right. And then, just the technology that we have now can help organize all that data by push of a button, especially if you're using a program like that Renaissance that we use now that used to be Illuminate. All she's got to do is she can click or whatever kind of data that she's looking for. If she needs to do it by demographics or by whatever it may be. It was crazy this morning. She was showing me a few more things, how she was doing some data. And I was just like, that is just crazy how you can just click some buttons and everything just turns into this pretty old, one of them she called the Christmas tree data that they call it for some reason, one of the things that she pulls. But I I don't know. There's proof in the pudding whenever you use that data. I think it's the biggest thing, like you're saying, some people are older and they don't want to deal with it, or they're more like me where I am not a data person at all because I've never had to use data a whole lot because in pre-K we didn't, there wasn't a whole lot of testing that we did in pre-K. You weren't allowed to do some of that stuff, but we still kept up with some things on our own, but not so much test data like we do now in your upper grades and stuff. So it's pretty neat. But
I'll say for my instructional coach that I followed or shadowed, she presented her data to the best that she could based on who was finished, who was where they should have been, and everything was pretty much filled out. So I think she tried to advocate based on the data that she had the best that she could. I do think that what I would have done differently if I was in her position or if I was a leader in her position, I would make sure that my content knew what it meant, like I was saying,
Yeah.
how important the data was.
Right.
And I would stress, regardless, I would stress that if we do it on the front end, it'll be less painful later on. Because as I was discussing with my principal, she said, once you get used to it, it's really not that bad. She said, it takes me about 45 minutes.
It becomes routine.
And that's exactly what she said. She said it becomes routine. So I do think that I would stress to my particular contents, I would stress to them how important the data is. Tell them why. I would probably even just during PL, just, do a little, because they pretty much keep us the whole hour and a half. So I would do at least, it's just enough time to use the restroom, y'all. So it's like, I would literally just.
It makes me think about going back to, it was in another class, but the adult learning strategies where it's like, we still as adults want to know why.
Yes.
Yes.
Like that would be such a great piece. It's like, well, why do I have to do this? Why is it important?
Yeah. Give me some proof.
Yes. Yeah. We have to be persuaded more so, and we're likely to have that resist. Yes. Yeah. So I would just make sure I told them why we need it. And I would want them to stay on pace to what they need to do. But
yeah. Well, I think that covers all of our prompts that we had to do, ladies.
Yes.
Yay. So I think that's it. So this ends our meeting of our information. So thank y'all.
Okay. All right.
Be in touch. Bye.
Okay. All right.